This section is about transition from early years to post-19, particularly focusing on educational settings. But the key transition elements are around settling into a new environment, early identification of needs, and effective parental involvement. So if we're starting from home to nursery, we've got to look at the identification of needs coming through, the emerging needs, the support that is required, the planned meetings involving the SENCO, the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, and relevant services, an induction for the new setting. We need to think about the preparation for adulthood from early years. And you'll see in the threshold document, we have the preparation for adulthood outcomes from early years right the way through to 25. In early years, it's about sitting down at mealtimes, looking at routines and self-care. It's about looking at the environment where the family and child feel comfortable. The early identification of need, perhaps using portage services and multidisciplinary professionals. Some of the work is actually undertaken at home and then links transition into a nursery environment. The parental involvement is kept clear with clear communication and lots of reassurance. This is the first time for many parents and carers that they will have interaction with other agencies. In terms of identification of needs, they may be enhanced, they may be complex, but we're building up ours incrementally, involving services. So step by step. This document is called Stepping Up. So we're taking it at the pace of the young person and the family and carer. In terms of preparation for adulthood also, young children will start to interact and communicate. They share with others, play with other children, taking turns, understanding meal and snack times, complying with all kinds of routines. So in terms of families and carers, have you actually visited the family hubs? You can access support and finance. There's some good ideas there. Maybe taking photographs of the setting that your child will be going into. Maybe if you have a childminder, involve them. Ask your health visitor, has the health visitor done the 2-year check? So share and communicate as much as you can. In terms of early years to primary, so coming out of nursery, again, looking at early identification of needs, looking at the various assessments that should be undertaken, collaboration between the services, and effective involvement of parents and families. Again, using the SEND thresholds, we'll be identifying whether the needs are enhanced or whether they're complex. We need a smooth handover with the key professionals, the visits to the primary school and meetings with relevant staff, looking at the learning environments, visual aids, structured routines, plans, communication preferences, discussed with all. And then the preparation for adulthood, maybe the areas of washing and brushing teeth, developing interest and travel, starting to understand health needs, and starting to take part in team games, building up friendships. So as families, have you thought about what you can do at weekend activities, school groups, sporting activities, local clubs? Look it up, check on websites of the school, look at the school policies on special educational needs, check out, are there any other family members that could help you in terms of settling in your child? The transition between primary and secondary can be often very difficult and problematic. The settings for primaries are very different to secondary. So there needs to be a lot of preparing for new routines, the demands of the curriculum. So there needs to be effective exchange of information, understanding through the SEND thresholds, the right kind of support that is required, the impact and outcomes and focus on building resilience, organisation and independent skills. So those young people who need enhanced support, so those are on SEND threshold 1 to 3, will need visits to schools, perhaps during the summertime, prior to entry in September, an updated SEND support plan, maybe a buddy system, a friend, peer support to help. They may need modification of the curriculum, an adaptation, some reasonable adjustments, and maybe some smaller group bases. Those that are on complex support, i.e. SEND threshold 3 to 5, may need some specific therapeutic or behavioural support, enhanced team of professionals, in-school support services, and again, reasonable adjustments. They may have access to resource bases or units within the school setting. In terms of preparation for adulthood, the introduction of sex education, relationship building, and maybe access to residential trips and independent travel. So again, visiting the school during the summer holidays is really important so the child becomes familiar with the surroundings. Maybe look at the Ofsted report and the school's websites to look at how they meet special educational needs in terms of that setting. So there are things to consider when choosing a secondary school. Are they going with their friends? Have a look at the curriculum. Does your child like sports, creative things, creative ideas, maybe performing arts? Is the environment calm? Is there plenty of space? Is it accessible? You could check up on the reports from the school about the progress that children make. Do they make good progress? Do they have a wide variety of activities? Is the communication with families good? You may want to ask, can we adapt the curriculum? Maybe looking at the range of vocational subjects, particularly in Key Stage 4. You may want to have a look at the school's behaviour policies, maybe their homework. What are the expectations of children in terms of routines? So when you're visiting your secondary school, use the SEND thresholds for ideas to discuss. Hello, this section is about transition and moving on for those children and young people who are in alternative settings or out of authority placements. The transition guidance remains the same for these children and young people. So meeting the needs of children and young people that cannot be met in mainstream or specialist settings, perhaps those that are in hospital or home tuition, those who are accessing elective home education may and will need to discuss with the various services, as some may not be available at that point to them. However, children and young people who've been out of schooling need the wraparound support from the multidisciplinary teams and agencies to support them moving on. Those who've been permanently excluded or placed on the education other than at school register can be registered with River Tyne Academy if they're secondary, or if they are primary at Eslington School or an education offered by the local authority. The Education Support Services will advise. For those children and young people who are educated and maybe some live out of area, transition again should be the same, and if a child has an education, health and care plan, then the transition back to their local community should be written into the plan at the earliest stage. The preparation for adulthood outcomes are again essential and an integral part of any plan. All relevant agencies must be involved to make the transition as smooth as possible. I hope you found this webinar useful and the information that you're going to receive. Please take time to read it. This is about the future of our young people's lives. It's about our young person's future in every aspect. please ensure that each child and young person can reach their full potential through an effective transition and moving on process. Thank you.